through, and I was very fortunate. I had a Flight Lieutenant Gill as my initial instructor, ex-RAF, who's still going, Bill Gill, to this day. And then there was this bunch of young guys, Vietnam retreads, Mick Haxel, Bob Treese, Dumpy Burns, Bags Matheson, boggy instructors who made out most of the rest of the training organisation. It was a good time. I mean, we were all very young. I was still 20 at that stage, so who's not having a good time? So I went up on the usual 707 with another of my course mates, Arnold Fox. We both went the same day, mid-April 70, through Darwin and Paya-Lebar, and finally on the 707, finally on to Tonsanut. I can still remember arriving in Saigon and the just how. Look, first of all, there was the smell. I don't know what the smell was of, but it was absolutely everything, and just the confusion and just stuff lying around, very messy. We wound up, Foxy and I wound up getting put on a USAF C-130B to go down to Vung Tau, and that came as a bit of a shock too, in that we'd been used to flying Australian Hercs, which were quite pristine. This thing seemed to have hydraulic oil running down the walls, and the guys were wearing Nomex trousers and T-shirts, the crew. And anyway, we made it okay. Down to Vung Tau, got there just as it was getting dark, and I remember we got put on a 5-ton truck and driven up, had no idea where we were, driven up the living area. And I remember Foxy, who was an ex-airman, stopped outside the quarters, and Foxy saying, well, this is okay, but where's the officers' accommodation? And there were these 2-storey grey wooden buildings, and over to the right was the officers' mess, painted green. And very shortly thereafter, Nugget Hibben, the CO, turned up to welcome us aboard. We now had 364 days to go. And we knew everyone, of course, because they'd all been at 5 Squadron when we were there. This would have been, it was mid-April, about the 15th of April, I think it was, about 14th, 15th of April, yeah. One of the people on our conversion course was Wing Commander Peter Coy, or squadron leader as he was when he was on conversion, who was the CO elect of 9. He turned up, I'm thinking about a month or 6 weeks later after we arrived, and Nugget went home. But you always, it's one of the great things about, you hear a lot of stories about how people had issues with coming back after Vietnam, and relatively few of our guys did, because you were with your friends before, during and even after. They were the same people, and if you wanted to talk drivel about what happened, there was always someone to listen to you. Yes, the process was really well established, and I think most of that credit for that goes back to John Paul as CO, who got some really good SOPs going with the hotel model particularly. And everything was pretty well documented. You spent, as a boggy, I don't know, probably about a month before you actually did a captain ride, doing co-pilot on all sorts of, all the various issues, patrol, extraction, insertion, troop lift, whatever came up. You could never really predict that from one day to the next. You were programmed for a particular mission the night before, the 01 to 08 mission, and did whatever came along. By that stage, we'd been on choppers for, 15, 16 months. Seriously overconfident, I've got to tell you. But, what do we need to do a month, because we know how this all works. But there were things, certainly the whole command and control of the operation you had to get to learn, because we didn't do that sort of thing in Australia. Maybe you did it at a Shoalwater Bay exercise in part, but as being part of the big picture where you had the three radios going with the tasking agency on VHF, air-to-air, and UHF, and artillery, and army liaison on FM. That took a bit of getting used to sorting out what do I need to hear, what do I don't need to hear, but yeah, I think we all, with a couple of notable exceptions, guys who didn't do well, but we all did.